Today we have a good one. It is Western States Week, and I thought of only one person to bring on the channel, and that is Ryan Miller, pro trail runner and just all around fantastic guy. Ryan, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
What's up, Cody? Thanks for having me, man. I'm excited to chat with you. And we've had a lot of chats offline, just kind of shooting the bull and
Yeah.
talking about running, gear, life, all kinds of stuff. And I'm excited to put one of our conversations out there. I think they're pretty entertaining.
Dude, absolutely. I mean, from being just two different shoe dogs right here, just the trail junkies. I feel like it was about time we hit a record and get this going. So, I know it was a couple years ago you took on Western States yourself. Now, it wasn't the day you wanted, but what was that like? What was it like lining up at Western States? Because what maybe not everybody knows, this isn't a large race. I mean, it's less than 200 people that get to line up. There's only a couple ways to get in: lottery, sponsorship, golden ticket. And you got a golden ticket and you lined up for Western States. What was that like?
Yeah, it felt surreal. I think we, as trail ultra running fans, a lot of us watch those YouTube videos of Western States and all these other adventures and stories out there. And to actually be part of it, you kind of look around and you're like, oh my gosh, like, hey, I'm standing next to Jim Walmsley on the start line of Western States. Like, I feel like I was just a fan of this guy a couple years ago. So it was amazing. And I definitely I had a fun time, but also a miserable time with I went into the race sick. So
Yeah.
I was kind of behind the eight ball right from the start. And I actually ran with Tyler Green for like the first like 20 plus miles or off and on. We were rolling right around each other, me, him, and Eric Sinsman for a while. So he ended up being on the podium. So I wasn't in a terrible spot, but it all caught up to me by the time I got to Robinson Flat, which is only 50K into the race. So I had a death march for another 25 miles to Michigan Bluff and, pulled the plug at that point. But ultimately, man, just unforgettable experience. Definitely one that I think would help me if I ever am fortunate enough to make it back to Western States, which I'm going to keep trying and go into these golden ticket races, and putting my name in the lottery because now my tickets are actually starting to build up, which is kind of neat.
Yeah, I mean, so that lottery is like, I feel like I don't even have a ticket in there. Like, I really don't. And I don't know if I'll ever run states, but I feel like I'm on edge. I can't imagine being a person that has like a couple tickets and just waiting and hoping their name comes out because, like I said, it's not like many other races. It's like you could be on that wait list for 10, 15 years. I mean, it could be a long time. So, like I said, it's one of those races you definitely don't take for granted. Now, to get to that one, like I said, you got a golden ticket. So that means you had to show up to a race and throw down, and you did Bandera. That was like, I feel like your coming out party. Did it feel like that was your coming out party to the ultra scene?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, it was my first ultra, so it's the ultimate coming out party, your debut. My only and longest run up to that point above 26.2 miles, which felt weird when I was out there and I wasn't even halfway through the race yet. But I think it stated at that point that, oh, this could be a guy who could be here for a few years and contending at the top. And, the golden ticket races are awesome from a nationally competitive spotlight. Or like Black Canyon this past year, there was, Tom Evans and a German athlete that came in that ended up on the podium. So some of them are starting to become more internationally competitive too. But I thought it was definitely a point where it's like, okay, like, if this is what this guy can do at his first stab at it, what can he do in the future? And I'm still waiting to see what that is because I haven't quite hit it out of the park like I did there yet again.
I mean, but it was one of those like coming out parties. And I remember watching the live stream of it, and it was crazy. It was like you and Cody Lynn, if I remember correctly, kind of going back and forth, back and forth. And I remember people going, "Who the heck is this Ryan Miller guy?" And I remember being in the chat, be like, "Dude, he is an Olympic trials runner. I mean, this dude is made for speed. This wasn't like a me coming out of nowhere that like is, slower than molasses. We're talking about a guy that's like, I mean, you've made the Olympic trials twice, right? In your career?
Yeah, 2016 and 2020.
I mean, so you were built for speed, and I feel like Bandera is that course that was made for you. Not terribly technical, but allows you to kind of throw that speed into place.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I
Yeah.
mean, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's a great mixture of a course. I'm sad they just announced the golden ticket races for 2023 and 2024 to qualify for the 2024 Western States 100. But Bandera is not a golden ticket race anymore. So they moved it over to Grindstone on the East Coast, which, granted, I think East Coast definitely deserved a golden ticket race. And it looks like they're trying to align more international races for international athletes to get into Western States. So kind of makes sense, but also sad. I live about an hour away from the Bandera 100K course. So it's definitely my home course. I can train on all the time. A la, Cole Watson at Canyon's 100K winning it just a couple months ago. So a little bit sad there, but, Bandera had its time in the light, and it'll still be a race that exists and is a good one for us locally. But unfortunately, I think I'll probably be only doing the 25K or 50K in the future there and lining it up at some other races.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty bummed when that got taken out. I love the golden ticket series, that way to get into a race. I don't necessarily love the races they select for it. I love that we're finally getting an East Coast race. I don't want to get too crazy here. So I love that they have an East Coast, but like I looked at some of these races, they're all UTMB races or a Hoka sponsored race. And I'm starting to look at that and you're like, okay, so pretty much States feels like it's being run by UTMB and Hoka. I really wish they would have kept Bandera in there, which I believe is also a Hoka race, but at least you're not in the same area. It feels like everything's Arizona, California, international, or now on the East Coast. It just feels like there's better ways to go around picking those golden tickets.
Yeah, there's so many things to take into account, right? It's like, okay, do you want like 100-mile races or 100K? And they've even had 50-mile races like Lake Sonoma 50 in the past. Although it seems like they've done away with that the past few years. And then, man, it'd be so fun to be a fly on the wall and hear what those behind the scenes meetings are like. Because I guarantee you the discussion we're having, the board of Western States to go along with the board and the leadership of UTMB and Hoka have probably come together many times to discuss these things. And there's no doubt there's financial interests align with those decisions. And Bandera is a Hoka race. It's just not a UTMB race, at least not yet. I don't know anything. I'm just it's not a UTMB race. And Western States being part of the UTMB World Series now, it makes sense to me why they're doing it. But it's unfortunate for those races and people that maybe don't have those types of races near them, like we do in Texas. There's not really any opportunities for us anymore.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of sucks. Like if you want that chance and you're that type of runner, I mean, and a lot of times these golden tickets aren't always sponsored athletes, so they're not getting their travel paid for. So a lot of that's coming out of your pocket. I know, like folks up in Canada and up in the East Coast, it's like you got to be methodical if you're going to try to get the states. Which one are you going to pick? You can't go too late in the season, then you're going to be burned out, like for states and things like that. So I do think it's really hard. So I was happy to see an East Coast race and everything. I was a little surprised by which one they picked, to be honest with you. Being an East Coaster, I think there's a lot of fantastic races that you could potentially pick. One I wish they would have picked was JFK. I wish that would have been a golden ticket. I love JFK, oldest ultra marathon in the US at least. And that would have been fantastic because, I think 50 miler would have been perfect. I know they want 100K or 100 miler, but I think there's potentially better races in my opinion.
Definitely. So I'm going to ask you a question now. I'm going to turn this around to you. Good. Name your top 3 races that you think should be golden ticket races. And you mentioned JFK. We can leave that as an honorable mention, or you can include it if you want. But
I'm going to keep that 3 in there.
Races.
I'm going to keep it in there because I think we need to give homage to that. I don't think JFK gets the respect it deserves. I mean, it really was one of the first ultras. It's a 50-miler distance. You got the Appalachian Trail, which is pretty gnarly. And then obviously it's some, more gravel roads, kind of roads-esque. So you kind of get a mixture of everything. I do think Black Canyon should be up there. I think that is a really good one. And then you get and then I think Javelina is a really good one. I think you have 3 different races at 3 different times of the year that potentially could be awesome races. I'm not saying there can't be over in Europe and things like that. I think those are options, but I think those would be pretty damn good ones. I think the energy Javelina brings is pretty damn awesome, and the coverage they're able to produce is really good too. How about you? What do you think 3 ones should be?
Yeah, they do a good job with that. I want to pick ones that aren't currently golden ticket races, and I think they do a pretty good job on distribution of time of year. Right? They have I think UTMB is the first one technically,
But
and then they have Grindstone. I'm just remembering this off the top of my head. I don't have it in front of me. Have Grindstone in September. I think they have another 100K in France in September. Javelina 100 in October. Then I think the race in Thailand, the 100 or 100K there is in like December or November. Black Canyon in February, Canyons in April.
yeah,
So I think we could probably maybe have one more in the spring.
I mean,
Yeah. And, the question always comes down to if you're going to put one that time of year, it's like you can't go into the mountains. It's too snowy, so you kind of have to keep it in a warmer weather climate. And then California has too many races. I'm shooting myself in the foot here because I don't really know what races I would
well,
put.
what about Lake Sonoma? What about Lake
Okay,
Sonoma?
no. Hear me out. Gorge Waterfalls.
Yes.
It's been a golden ticket race in the past. They brought it back. I've done the 50K and it was fantastic.
Yes.
I think that would be a good one. It's pretty dang close to Canyons, like 2 weeks before, basically. Yeah. So you can see the timing in that being a little bit off. But Gorge Waterfalls, even some of those other races up in the Pacific Northwest, like let's just say Tillamook Burn. I know that's in May. That's even closer. Yeah. But man, yeah, I want to pick races in the summer that are more like Wyoming, Colorado, like Rocky Mountains, Utah. Just say Wasatch 100. Okay. That would be an awesome one that I've seen. Yeah. Have a couple of athletes I coach running it and great history. I think that's in September actually, so wouldn't be a bad one there. But needless to say, I think what we're both saying is there's lots of great options out there. It'll probably rotate more in the future, but we're probably going to see it continue to financially and series align with UTMB and Hoka as long as that partnership is going.
So, and I know I'm going to sound like that American, and I'm okay with that. I just hope majority of them still stay in the States. My concern is that it's going to start getting a little too scattered. So that's one thing. My one hope is, and one thing I wish they would do, like a World Cup, keep one rotating. Just throw it out there. Let race directors bid on getting that in, and then almost do like a lottery. You could be like, okay, these are their 3 finalists, and then like have them propose it and get the hype around it. I think that would be really cool. A one golden ticket race that changes every year, and the race directors, and you don't know where it's going to be. I hope it's in the United States, but it could just jump from area to area, and I think that would get the hype going. And I think the amount of people that would want to go do that race would be pretty high.
That would be pretty cool. I like that. Even like the race that was in South Africa. I know Drew Holman went and ran it this past December. Was it the Cape Town, like 100K or something like that? I can't remember the name off the top of my head. I mean, that would be an awesome one internationally. Yeah. Think about those poor folks down there in South Africa. They don't have anything close to them. Or South America. You don't see any South American athletes at Western states ever. Probably because there's no golden ticket race opportunities for them.
Well, that'd be a good one too. I'd rather see that one than, like maybe one than in France or something like that. That'd be cool. So definitely. Like I said, that golden tickets are definitely something that drives a lot of people in there. Now, when you won your golden ticket, a lot of people want to know, like, when you get that golden ticket, you're an unsponsored athlete. What does that look like? Do a lot of brands reach out to you? I know you signed with Nike for that Western States, but did a lot of brands go, hey, Miller, sign with us for a short-term contract? What does that typically look like?
I bet some of them are probably like, who is this guy? I'd love to talk to him, but maybe they didn't know how to get a hold of me. Eventually I did take meetings with Nike, Solomon, and I chatted a bit with Saucony and Hoka, but ultimately they either didn't have room on their team or weren't interested at the moment, which makes sense. I mean, I was such a new person to ultra running. So it really came down to Solomon and Nike, and both offers were totally bare bones. Basically just like gear bonuses and like a small stipend, which is probably what the majority of quote unquote professional ultra runners are on anyways. So I wouldn't say everyone was beating down my door, but I did have a couple of good opportunities to at least get my foot in the door as a professionally sponsored trail ultra runner that would have given me the opportunity to maybe push that to what I would deem true professional status, where you can make enough to actually sustain yourself from your ultra running income, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. Yeah, because I was always wondering about that, because like there are a handful of the unsponsored athletes that to get these tickets, and I was always wondering, because then by the time Western comes, they're like suited up in a certain brand, you're like, oh, okay, I guess they're a sponsored athlete. And I guess the big thing for a lot of these brands are like seasonal contracts. So is that pretty much what you had, like a seasonal contract, or was it like a set in stone kind of contract with them?
I was offered a long-term contract
Okay.
with them, and I actually, because of it being more minimal, I wanted to go more short term because I thought my stock would only go up from that point. So I actually counter proposed with like a short term contract myself, betting on myself. Ultimately, that bet did not pay off, which is fine. I mean, like if you take your shot, I think it's worth it. Um, so ultimately, that was my decision to do that, and yeah.
Cool. No, I mean that I think that was cool. You know what I mean? And like I said, as a person that loves shoes and everything like that, I mean, I grew up loving Nike. I mean, I think a lot of us
Mhm.
did, so to be able to get that spot, a Nike contract signed and everything that's got to be freaking awesome. I mean, anytime you get any sponsorship, but as like I said, as a person that loved the Jordans and Nike and things like
Mhm.
that, signing with Nike is not easy. Not everybody can do that. So that's a huge accomplishment.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. What's interesting in the world of track and field and road running, like Nike is kind of like almost the standard, right? Like that's where typically all of the best athletes, at least Americans, go, and it is considered the most prestigious. Trail, though, I don't really think so. At this point, I think a lot of folks would, if they had the choice, would almost rather sign with Hoka, Solomon, Adidas at this point.
Yeah.
So at least that's like when I talk to other sponsored athletes and then kind of get the feel of like what it's like to be on those teams. I get that feeling that it's a little bit more of a level playing field, which is cool. I think it's awesome that there's like different opportunities out there that it's not just like, oh, if you're the best, you just have to go to this place. It's not that at all.
Yeah, no, I think that's rad. And the one thing I will say, I don't know much about track. I never did track, but like the roads, I mean, I would say Adidas is a powerhouse over there. And I find
Mm-hmm.
it really interesting because they're pretty much a powerhouse also on the trails. And I feel like that's the only brand that has both. Nike obviously got Kachobee, 2 hours, I mean, he's a beast in itself, Nike and everything. We go over to the trails, Nike trails. They've had some great athletes come through, but a lot of them didn't stay. You had a David Laney, a Tim Tollefson, you had a Zach Miller with Nike. Boom, they're gone. You know what I mean? And then I think that's the biggest thing. They've had talent, they've had you, but they don't really retain it, which I think is really interesting. And whereas like another brand like a Hoka, great on the trails, roads, they're okay. You know what I mean? So I do find that
Mm-hmm.
uh that kind of story, they're really not parallel, roads and trails. I mean, Solomon, look at that. I mean, they don't really even have trail or road shoes. They're
Yeah.
trying to get into it,
Yeah.
but not enough where you're going to line up a marathon throwing on a Solomon shoe, unless you're Noah Droddy, and things like that. So, I definitely find that really interesting. But no, like I said, hearing about the contracts post, Bandera and everything like that, I think a lot of athletes nowadays are starting to find the value in themselves. So I could potentially see where short-term contracts like that, if you're on a hot streak, could definitely go really well for you. So no, I definitely get that.
Definitely.
Now to turn all of our attention to Western states, because that's what people want to hear. They want to know about states and everything like that. And who do we think, to trail junkies, who do we think is going to win? I think this is going to be one of the most competitive years that we have going on for two reasons. The snowy course, I think that the first part of it is going to level the playing field a little bit. I mean, we saw in Broken Arrow, I mean, people are slipping and sliding over there.
Mm-hmm.
That's snowy. And then the second one is part of the trail that used to have shade burnt down. I mean, there's sections
Mm-hmm.
that used to get shade, though they don't exist anymore. So it is going to be I think some of those things are going to level the playing. I don't think you're going to have people just take off in the beginning and kind of like never look back. What are your thoughts on, some of the things you're looking at for this upcoming states?
Yeah, that's good points about the course and specifically changes in the first half that might wear people down in different ways. But I tell you what, most of these people up front, like there's a reason they're there and they have prepared specifically for those demands. They know how they're going to have to put forth their effort in the first half, no matter how sloppy or snowy the course is up in the high country. And then the heat and when they get into the canyons with no tree cover, it's gonna no doubt take some people out. I think, but ultimately, I think the folks that are prepared for it and their cooling strategies are on point and they got the right gear on them, I think we'll handle it just fine, honestly. So I don't think it's going to have as big an impact as maybe we think in terms of the overall competitiveness of the field. I think everybody's ready for it. Now, finishing times potentially, but the forecast is showing for a quote unquote cool year where it'll finish like in the 80s, which is, 15, 20 degrees Fahrenheit lower than what it normally is. So that could counterbalance a little bit of the tougher course conditions in the first half.
I agree. Now, do you think we see a lot more people with poles to start the race? I mean, Broken Arrow, I mean, they were all using poles. I mean, that was really difficult to get up.
No one's going to use poles. Not the top end of the field. I don't think there's nothing out there that is so technical or steep that you would need poles. The only place I think you would see that is maybe in the canyons for a handful of folks. When they're climbing to Devil's Thumb.
Yeah, I mean,
because the snow. But like, if you're putting the poles into the ground in snow and it's wet, I mean, are you going to be able to get much grip out of like pushing into that with your arms? You may put all your weight into your arms and it slips and you fall flat on your face, right? So I bet most people, they just got good traction shoes on, is what it is.
Oh, I mean, I guess that's the first prop bet, I mean, they do prop bet for the Super Bowl. Over under, how many of the stars have poles to start the race? So, but let's take a look at the women. I'm going to bring up some of them. I mean, I don't want to do top 10, but we got some. We kind of talked about this before we jumped online. I mean, if you look at both the men and the female, I mean, it's a deep field. I mean, for both sides. Typically, when we talked about it for the men, you don't have Peterman coming back. You don't have some of the guys that Drew Holman's not coming back this year. I mean, some of those guys that are typically in that top 10 didn't come back. And then for the females, the top 4 didn't come back. I mean, but if you look at this field, I feel like it's super deep. What are your thoughts, especially the females? I think the female field is a lot deeper, but I think you were looking at the men's. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I haven't done the math on it or anything.
We're not mathematicians here.
I just look over the names. I'm like, damn, like there's a reason why everybody has to get in via top 10 or golden ticket. And I think there's a handful of contenders that also get in via some of the sponsorship stuff through Hoka or other sponsors. And even you've seen some people come through via the lottery and actually get into the top 10 before. A little bit rare, but you see that every once in a while. So I wrote down a top 3, and then I wrote down some honorable mention names for both men and women. Okay. But it was so hard. I felt, I mean, I don't know whether they listened to this or not. I doubt it the week of the race, but as some people, I was like, damn, like I really think that person can do well, but I think it's probably more likely that the people I've listed down end up doing it. And so like I lean towards, do you have experience on the course? What has your recent form looked like? And just whether I think you're fast or not, honestly. I think it's shown time and time again that it's, the people that are fast, in terms of just like they've got the raw speed, right? Like they can really throw down on the Western States course, because it is a non-technical fast course, even a course with 18,000 feet of climbing and 23,000 feet of descent. I mean, less than 10 years ago, there's people winning this race. Rob Krar in Nike Lunar Racers, a road racing shoe. You know what I mean? Like that's what you can run in on this style course if your feet can handle it. Now, I don't think most of these people are wearing. I actually did see the Adidas team. They're wearing hybrid road shoes at Black Canyon 100K. So they had a road platform with like a trail outsole on the bottom. So you'll probably see some of that out there with some custom stuff for a lot of these athletes. But I think those are some of the things I take into consideration when looking at who I think will finish at the top.
Yeah, I mean, and that Adidas shoe, the one I think Tom Evans was rocking, I know a lot of them were wearing, was a shoe. They're in their development specifically for the States. So that, as a person that loves shoes, I was like, tell me more. And they're like, we can't. I was like, damn it. All right. So now I gotta see. But it's one of those shoes that, like, I think with Adidas, it would be interesting because I do think they're putting a lot of resources in that. And I think Tom Evans definitely in for a big day. But before we jump to the men, give me your top 3 females.
Yeah. So number 1, no, I'm going to go 3-1.
Okay. 3-1. Okay.
Number 3, Keely Henninger or Heiner.
Okay.
I always say Henninger, Heiner. It's something like that. Sorry,
Yeah.
Keely. But Keely Heininger, I just think she looks so awesome at Black Canyon 100K. She's very dialed in as an ultra athlete. She's recently taken a bit of a step back professionally to focus on her running, aligned with a new sponsor in ultra. I'm pretty sure that she's totally driving with. So I think talk about current form. She's got the experience. She was leading Western States last year before she jacked up her ankle in the canyons. So I think she's got some
Look,
unfinished business and she'll be on the podium.
you look
Number
strong.
two, I got Heather Jackson.
Ooh, okay.
This is more of a gut feeling here because it kind
Okay.
of bucks the trend of like, experience. She did go to Javelina 100 and didn't quite have the day she wanted over there. But gosh, if you look at her training and just the amount of aerobic volume she puts in, her triathlon background, I just think she's going to have a heck of a day out there. So I got Heather Jackson. And then number one, who else? Courtney Dauwalter. Like, yeah, at this point, you just cannot bet against her. I think it's more, for me, it's more like, does she break the course record or not?
Ooh,
I'm saying no,
okay.
simply for the fact of course conditions at the beginning. It's a cool year. She's been just destroying everything lately. So I bet it's more of a 50-50 shot. But again, I'm following my gut here. I'm saying
Okay.
I don't think she nabs course record this
Okay.
year at Western States.
But man,
And
that
then wait,
yeah.
honorable mention: Leah Yingling, Camille Herron, Emily Hawgood, some of the top returners from last year. Camille Herron, unparalleled success in like timed and
Yep.
flat ultras. If she strikes it, she'll strike it well. She just hasn't quite hit it in a race
Yep.
like Western States.
All
So
right.
those are mine. What about yours?
Yeah, all right. I'm gonna go similar order. Your three. Number three, Heather Jackson. I do think Heather has a great day. I think her triathlon experience, I think the moment won't be big for her or too big. I think that sometimes the first time there, it can be a little too big. I don't think she's going to run into that. I think she's going to be dialed in. And I think what was it, Canyons she ran or Black Canyons? I can't remember. And the thing I
Mhm.
looked at, she kept changing her shoes. That's the only person on that course that changed her shoes 3 times. I think she's trying to figure out the trails. And I think that's a huge thing. I think she went in there. She already had her ticket. Remember, she got the Hoka gave it her spot. So she was already in there. She went to go earn her stripes. So I think at Black Canyons, she was trying to figure it out. And going through 3 shoes tells me she's still trying to figure it out. So I'm going to give her the third spot. Number two, Katie Scheid. She crushed UTMB last year. I think she is a woman on a mission. And I think her and Courtney duke it out for a large portion of the race. I think UTMB was Katie Scheid's been around for a while, but UTMB last year was her coming out party. She's with North Face right now. She used to be with On. I think the new shoes, the new coach, she's with a Coop. So I think the new coach and everything, I think she's just finally all clicking. And she's been over in the States doing a lot of her training. So I think she comes in well rested. And then it's kind of boring, but Courtney, I don't think you can bet against Courtney. I think she is, if you're putting money, if we were in Vegas and I was putting money down, it feels like that's a surefire win. Because she is just so dialed in. I don't think she's lost an ultra quite some time. I think the last time she lost was her DNF at Hard Rock when she had the stomach issue. Ever since that, she hasn't had any issues. And I think her biggest issue was never running. It was her stomach. And apparently, these last couple races, she figured it out. And that's something I'm excited for. The thing that, if you always saw Courtney, she had her DNFs were typically stomach related. And knock on wood, she hasn't had those in a while. So those are my top three. And then my sleeper picks, my Keely is my number. Technically, I had Keely at number 4. And person I just love in the sport is Katie Asmuth. And she's one of my runners. If she can just put it all together, she doesn't fall and get all banged up. I do think she can have a great day. I mean, she was top 10 last year, top 10 the previous year. So I do think she's piecing it all together. And I think she's going to come in, like I said, I think pretty rested. And then the other person I had, let me just grab their name real quick. And I think they fall into this category because I don't think there's non-binary. So I do apologize if there are. And that is Riley Brady. They are freaking awesome. They won, I think they got second place at Javelina. And they are just a strong, strong runner. I've seen Riley firsthand experience. I raced against them. Ooh, they took off and they never turned back. Like that's the type of speed they are bringing. So that is my deep sleeper pick. She's from the or she's from up north, so I got to root a little bit for my Beast Coast kind of people. But Riley, I think they could have a great day.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I don't know how I left Katie Scheid off my list, at least in honorable mentions after winning UTMB. So
But
good,
that's what I
good.
keep going back to.
There.
It is a stacked list. I mean, you can just go down the list. I mean, of Megan Morgan could have a heck of a day. I mean, seriously. I mean, you look down, you have Emily Hogwood. I know you said that. Nicole Bitter. I mean, that's a seasoned vet right there. I mean, I know you said Camille Herron. Camille Herron, I think this could be the year she pieces it together. I don't know if I could put my money on number one, but could I see a top five? Yeah, I do. And the reason why is because I think she's kind of getting pissed off for being overlooked for Ultra Runner of the Year. I don't think people are giving the flat track races enough. So I think she comes off a little pissed off this year, and I could see a top five finish for her. I mean,
Yeah.
you want to throw a little fire to it. I mean, if you follow her on Twitter or something, she kind of gets a little fiery on there that people aren't respecting those track ultras.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Agreed.
All right. And like I said, I think I look down the list. Do I think there's any very deep sleepers? I don't really know. It kind of sucked to see Devin Yanko drop out. I think that she could have had a really good day, but it does look like she dropped. And then Leah. I mean, I think Leah. I mean, I think she's just fantastic. I think personally, Katie Asmuth and Leah, I might be cheering the most for because I just think they're awesome for the sport.
Yep. Great people for sure. So
Yeah.
I wish I could I wish I could like list it all the way down to 15 and say these will all be the top 15 no matter what. But
All right.
inevitably, I think you see every year that it looks so deep,
Yeah.
and then you get kind of like a 20 to 40% dropout rate of the elite athletes, anyways. So
Crazy.
We'll see how it breaks down. It's always surprising. I remember when I did it in 2021, seeing that like, you know, a lot of the veterans of the sport, people that would be considered like super consistent, were dropping out in the middle of the race. You know, Bronco Billy, and I think of a couple other guys. Basically, just like people who had been top 10 5 years in a row, all of a sudden like dropping out at Forest Hill or something like that. So we'll probably see something like that along the way. But what do you think about the men?
All right, I'll kick the men off. All right, so this one was really tough for me. I kept looking at the list, and honestly, to be honest with you, I'm using the free trail. That's what I just go off of. It's so easy to use. My number three, I have Anthony Costellos. I think he's been running strong. I love how he came out swinging at Black Canyons, and I think this is more of like a gut pick than anything else. Number two, I have Adam Murray. I think he's just been running so freaking strong. And I think maybe it's the name Adam, but I think he has his Adam Peterman moment. I think he's been just crushing it and kind of going under the radar a little bit. I don't think many people are talking about him. And then number one, I feel like similar to Courtney, is Tom Evans. I feel like when I see a Tom Evans up there, it's really hard to vote against him. He's a great guy, and I think he's just so strong right now. He had that surgery, and post-surgery, he's come out swinging. And those are my top three. And then my sleeper picks. I think Arlen Glick gonna have a great day. And one runner I would love to see win it, Hayden Hawks. I think that dude is just. I love watching him run. I think he's going to have a hard day. I think he's been knocking on the door, but I have him pretty much coming in fifth. And then the other one, Scott Traer. I think that guy is freaking awesome. I know, like, I love the bejeweled kind of dress shirt he goes running out with. And then his recent reel of him campaigning for people to vote for him on Free Trail Fantasy to be the number one pick. So those are my picks. How about you?
Oh, that's awesome. Those are all great names. I have some similar names in a different order.
Oh, okay.
Over here. So number three, someone you didn't mention actually, and this is a little bit more of a gut pick on my end because I think the variance it's pretty high with him in this race, but home course advantage, recent form amazing, desire to get it done really high. Cole Watson.
Ooh.
So just been seeing a lot of the training he's been doing. Just won Canyons. 100K, had been top 3 to 4 and like tons of other golden ticket races before that, and just hadn't quite knocked it out. Was even leading Black Canyon 100K over Tom Evans and Anthony Casales for the longest time heading into the second half. Just couldn't quite hold on there. So trains and lives on the course. I think he's going to have an awesome day and get on the podium.
Okay.
Number 2 is Tom Evans. Yeah, just I listened to his podcast on the Single Track podcast yesterday, and his preparation inspires me. He is so diligent, scientifically oriented, hits every aspect, has like 4 coaches, like nutrition, running, physiological, like just psychological, like every aspect is covered by him. I'm
That's
so
his
impressed.
military in him. I mean, he's a
Yeah.
military guy. I feel like he's so regimented. And hearing, yeah, I watched the podcast, and he also has like series going on YouTube, and it's
Mm-hmm.
just like, dude, you're like a freaking machine. Sorry, go
Yeah.
ahead.
It's pretty cool. So I have him getting second. And then you mentioned him last on yours, but I just got a feeling this year that he went from running right behind Jim to fading to 7th in 2021. He got second last year. I think he wins it this year, Hayden Hawks.
Okay.
I think very similar, almost like the American version of Tom Evans, not a military background, but just kind of checks every single box and is very professional in what he does. And I think Hayden Hawks is going to go out there and get the win this year. And then honorable mentions, like you mentioned, Anthony Costales. I mean, just absolutely blew everybody away at Black Canyon 100K. Again, variance is wide. I could see him winning it.
Yep.
Could also see him having a tough day out there at 100 miles, but he's got experience in like Run Rabbit Run and some of these other hundreds he's done recently. So I think he's going to be good. Hard to bet against Arlen Glick. I feel like Arlen Glick and Leah Yingling are like the twins on the men's and women's field, just so consistent, always show up and put up a good performance. I'm just not sure Arlen quite has it to get to the very top of the podium out there. And then Tyler Green, same thing. Like it's so hard to bet against that guy and not put him out on the podium after the last couple of years. And I bet you anything what happens is a couple of the names I mentioned end up dropping out and Tyler finds himself in like 3rd place or something like that. Would not bet against that outcome.
No, and I forgot about Tyler Green. Tyler Green is an assassin. I love watching Tyler Green for the pure fact you'll be watching the live stream and he's 50th. And you're like, oh, Tyler Green's having a bad day. And then you walk away, you come back. Oh, Tyler Green's 30th now. You walk away, come back. He's 20. And he just keeps like, he's a guy that sticks to his plan and like doesn't alter. And that is like the coolest thing. He's just like ding, ding, ding. And all of a sudden you're top 5, and that's, he's freaking awesome. And I will say Anthony Costales, reason why I picked him is he lost his sponsorship with Solomon right before Black Canyons. And I think he came out pissed off. I mean, he wore his, what was it, his high school penny or college, I can't remember.
Yes, college,
And I could see him coming off pissed off again at States. I think that helps. I do. I'm a big sports lover. And when you have that chip on your shoulder, like, oh, okay, you don't think I was worth the sponsorship? Let's go. And I could see that. And I know you mentioned Cole Watson, and I loved watching him run. My only problem with Cole Watson is that's 100K is pretty damn close to States. I mean, Canyons itself is pretty damn close. And then he did Black Canyons. That's, and he went all out. It's not like he used that as like a real training run. I mean, that's 2 big races leading up to States. So that's my only reason why I could see him coming top 10 or potentially blowing up because that's a lot of running.
It is. Yeah. And that's the variance right there, right? You never know. We make all these picks and there's so many deserving names. But that's the fun of it. We'll watch it. We'll have fun with it. And genuinely rooting for everybody to have their best possible day. Also rooting for the chaos that is the Western States endurance run.
Like a Mel Kiper of fantasy. I'm like, this person's going to win. And then all of a sudden you're looking at 10 and I got none right, And okay with that. I'm hoping we see a snowball get thrown. I'd love to see that. I'd love a snowball fight on the way up, just a couple of the pros having a good day, throwing the snowballs.
I want to see people using snow as a cooling technique. So I want to see them stuffing snow in their ice bandana. How about that?
Dude, I'm waiting for them to grab snow and throw it down their tights and just keep on going, Drew Holman style, throwing the ice down their pants. So
yeah.
Now, I mean, I do think though, I mean, the one name we did leave off too, and is Matthew Blanchard from Canada.
Oh man. Another UTMB snub, getting second last year after I left off Katie Snide in the women's side. You're so right,
dude. I'm telling you. I mean, you removed your typical, You don't have Adam Peterman. You don't have Jim Walmsley. You don't have Tim Tollison. You don't have Jared Hazen. Some of I think the names that kept coming back for the longest time, at least since I've been in the sport. You've had
Mhm.
certain names that always came back. Like they're not here this year. And I think the same thing with the women. I think this is like a brand new bunch of people. And I also think the younger runners coming into the sport are just so good. I do. I think like for the longest time, it was like, oh, you need to earn your stripes, and it took you a while to figure it out and everything. No, I think these younger runners are coming in more dialed in, learning from the elder spokesman of our sport, and just coming in and like knocking it out of the park. I mean, if you go in free trail, look at some of their ages. There's a lot of freaking 20-year-olds in this group
Mhm.
that could just have
So
a.
true.
So, I mean, do you think more people are foregoing the because for the longest time, I felt like you did road marathon, you did the ultras, and then you figure, then you go to the crazy ultras, 200 miles, 250, you know what I mean? Do you think more people are just surpassing the marathon scene and coming straight to the trails nowadays?
Yeah, I think people just aren't scared. They've seen people set a precedent, many women and men at a young age, that it can be done. And
Yeah.
I think it's also an easier avenue to, if you want to take your athletics to be professional, it's certainly easier to get a sponsorship in ultra trail running than it is on the roads. I mean, I'll be the first one to speak to that. I was a 214 marathoner and wasn't getting jack squat, even though that's 4 minutes away from probably having a legit shot at making the Olympic team. Um, but it's not worth the same. And ultra running, it just, the bar's a little bit lower in terms of the depth, at least at that level. So I think that's one thing that maybe might be drawing. But most of the folks just genuinely love running on the trails, is what it is. Because if you don't like running or running on the trails or ultra running in general, you're not going to last very long. You're going to go through these first few races and be like, is this really worth it? Just training for like 2 events a year and go
Yeah.
through all this pain and discomfort when I don't really enjoy it. So most people seem to genuinely like it.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I do think too is nowadays we have so much media coverage of the trail scene as well. I think that's played a huge role. I mean, with all the documentaries from Ginger Runner, Billy Yang, Ryan Thrower, all these great documents. And now you have Western States live stream. I mean, I think that also plays a role in it. Younger runners now can go onto YouTube and see
Mm-hmm.
what ultra scene is about. Whereas before, a lot of times it was like word of mouth, or you went to a trailhead and you start running with your local group, and they were telling you about the states or telling you. But like being over here on the East Coast, like I'm never, I don't really run on those types of trails. That seems so foreign to me. But now being able to log in, open up your laptop and see on YouTube, I mean, I think that's made a huge, huge benefit to the sport.
Definitely.
Cool.
Definitely. So
Yeah.
I want to ask you, any gear or shoes that you're looking out for at Western States?
I am. So this one's always interesting to me because a couple years ago, all you saw was the Tecton X everywhere. Hoka sponsored Tecton X, and none of the athletes wore it. Will Hoka athletes wear the Tecton X in this upcoming Ultra? I think that's going to be a big one to me because they've been putting a lot of money in it. They updated the tread, so it's a little bit deeper lugs. Also, do we actually see more runners wearing plated shoes? And then my third one is, and this is a big one, how many of the top 10 people are wearing prototype shoes? Because I'm a big believer that if it's a prototype shoe, you shouldn't be able to race in it. I think anybody that's lining up, especially for these big races, if it's not out for the masses to purchase, can't wear it. I love that rule in the road running scene, marathon. If you're going to run a marathon, it has to be a specific height, it has to be dimensions, and it has to be a shoe that Joe Schmo, who's behind you, can buy too, because every dog has their day. And I always hear that with ultra marathon. Oh, anybody can line up and win it. I mean, you were Bandera. Nobody really knew you. You
Mhm.
lined up and you won it. I do think I wish they would no prototypes. Thoughts?
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I like that they throw prototypes in there and test them on the biggest stage. A little bit of an unknown. It brings some excitement. Like, oh, what's on that person's feet? What's on that person's feet? So I think it's really fun to see that. And most of those prototypes probably eventually are coming into production at some point. But you're right, it does definitely offer a significant advantage,
Yep.
especially if those prototype shoes are good. I would venture to say that some of the prototypes actually end up not working out for the best, whether they just don't fit well or they're not tested enough going into the race. So we'll see. So yeah, I'm really interested to see that. What's the next evolution? I mean, from all brands, right? I'm excited that Nike's finally releasing their prototypes.
Yeah.
The Ultra Fly. They've had that on the feet of their. I mean, I tried to get some on my feet for 2021, but they didn't make it in my size. But Drew Holman and Tyler Green had it 2 years ago. Still haven't released it to the public. So it'd be interesting to see them, Saucony, Hoka, Solomon, just what do they bring to the table?
Yeah.
One of the things I always like to see is just what are folks doing to manage the heat? So I was like seeing what are the latest cooling techniques from everybody.
Yeah.
So you see everything from ice bandanas, headbands, vests, compression gear, how they keep themselves wet, all that stuff. Mainly because I'm want to be doing that stuff myself, living in Texas in the summer. At my next race, I'm doing a 50 miler in Hawaii in August. So it's going to be very important for me to work on cooling techniques for the next month and a half leading into that.
Where's that?
The Kauai 50.
Okay.
So yeah, this guy, he put up just an insane amount of prize money, which got me interested in the first place. It's like $15,000 for the win. Oof. I was like, damn, that's pretty good. And I am not as drawn to the big mountain stuff in the summer quite yet, especially where I live, and I can't really train for that specifically. So I was like, you know what? Go to Hawaii, go on vacation, number one. Number two, have a fun ultra race experience. I can train specifically for Hawaii because I live in like the armpit of America, which is the Texas Gulf region. So yeah, that'd be fun. So I'm looking at like the ice and cooling techniques.
That's clutch. The other thing I'm looking forward to is, and I feel like at least in the years past, it was the kit releases. This is when everybody shows off what their new kits are going to look like. And I've had word on some of them, but I'm excited to see what like Hoka's new lineup looks like. I'm excited to see what Adidas ones, because I feel like Adidas always brings out something pretty nice.
Yeah, that is really fun to see, and what colors are kind of like part of their new scheme and everything. Yeah, I like when they have trail specific ones too. Like I know when I was part of Nike Trail, they made trail specific kits, but before that, I think a few years they just used the same like road and track kits for like the trail athletes. I think Hoka actually has been using the same kits between road, trail, and ultra. You see that kind of blue orange, almost looks like a sunset kind of deal. I wonder if they'll be wearing that again this year.
I hope they switch it up. I hope they get, mix it up a little bit because, like I said, I like seeing the new kits. So
yeah, definitely. But then other people like Solomon sponsored athletes, I feel like there is no consistency. They just wear almost whatever they want, right?
Yeah. Well, I feel like the European, I feel like that's more like they're dialed in with their, like, besides Courtney, with some of them, they're all like the white t-shirt and like the tights are the short shorts, So
yeah.
I feel like, but I do, like I said, because the Golden Trail series I watch a lot of, which you see a ton of Solomon. I think they all like that same white shirt pretty much.
They really do. Yeah. I'm waiting for somebody to pull a Killian. If you remember that, the movie, gosh, what was the one? It was about Western states in like 2010. And it's the one everybody talks about. I'm drawing a blank on the name right now, but it was like Killian's like first or second year running Western States. He wore like an all white compression kit, like compression top down to like his elbows, compression tights, and it was all white. And you're getting wet the whole time, so you can imagine if you don't have anything on underneath that, it might show some stuff. But I also have to imagine that if you're going to optimize your cooling out there, that having compression white gear is the absolute best way to go. Yep. So I want to see somebody go all out and just wear something like that out there and just don't hold back on it.
You got a race in Hawaii. Let's see it. Let's get the all white.
Oh yeah, it's my turn. Yeah,
it's your turn. You just named it. All right, for his upcoming race, Ryan Miller is going to be wearing an all white jumpsuit. So let's go.
There we go. I like it.
Breaking news.
Yeah, I still need to balance the fact that Hawaii, as it Texas, it's very humid.
Yep.
So like humidity plays a big role in keeping yourself wet and cool. It doesn't evaporate as quickly, so it's a lot tougher to do. Versus Western states, it's much drier out there, and you spray something on yourself. I remember putting ice in my bandana on my hat, like at Black Canyon this past year, and by the time I got to the next aid station, it was all gone and completely evaporated. I was 100% dry, and that doesn't happen in humid locations.
No, not at all. So we've been going for a while now. I don't want to keep you too long, but it's definitely, like I said, I don't think this is going to be the last time I bring you on, talk about the racing scene, the trail culture, as we keep saying. And I'm excited to see what States is. I mean, I think, like I said, we listed our top 5, top 7, give or take. And I think if you look down that list, it's 15, 20 deep. And I think any of those racers can have a day. And I'm excited to see potentially someone knock off Courtney. Could that be it? I mean, if you can beat Courtney in 100 milers, that's pretty badass.
Cody, when I was younger, I was really small growing up, like below the 5th percentile in height. My coaches always used to tell me, the bigger the tree, the harder they fall. And that always got me motivated to beat the big guys. So I think maybe some people can take that motto into Western states and thinking about, all right, like Courtney, the bigger the tree, the harder they fall. I'm going to do this. I'm going to knock it down or something like that. So that might be something good to think about.
I know. So, like I said, definitely catch States. Like I said, they're gonna have that live stream going this weekend. I know I'll be watching with a ton of people from the trail scene. So, before I let you go, anything else you want to talk about? Plug before we let go?
No, just tune in. There's gonna be a live stream of Western States. Get your free trail fantasy picks in. That's always a fun competition to be a part of. Don't be afraid to make the contrarian picks, because so many people put their picks in, and if you just go by the order by which they're ranked or anything like that, I can almost guarantee you're not going to win.
Oh.
Like you win by picking the upset on Courtney, or like just nailing 3, 4, 5, 6 all correct.
Yeah.
So throw some names out there that maybe some people aren't expecting. It might pay off.
Yeah, and none of that. If you get your free trial picks in and you do win, sounds like they have some nice prizes going around this time around.
Yeah.
I mean, they always give out some nice prizes, but definitely keep your eyes out. Not only do you win bragging rights with your fellow runner, get some sweet swag too. So
yeah, it's right.
Non-sponsored episode. Sorry, free trial. Don't throw anything our way. This is just us loving the because I love fantasy football. I love all that fantasy and seeing it on the trail. It's pretty cool. So,
oh yeah, for sure. I'm a big fantasy football guy myself, so I love the translation there.
Yeah, I try to keep. Even though you're a Dallas Cowboys fan, I try to overlook that, right? So,
okay. I'm a fan of whoever's on my fantasy team. I'll just put it that way.
I mean, as an Eagles fan, it hurts a little bit. I love you, Ryan, but like it hurts a little bit, to have a Cowboys fan on my pod. But it's okay.
Okay, last thing before we go, I gotta tell you this idea I have for free trail fantasy. I think they should structure it a little bit more like fantasy football, where it's like you have like pools of competition instead, and you actually have a draft. How cool would that be? Like, let's just say, I mean, these races are not so deep. You can have like 10 teams of 5, like 50 runners deep, but like, let's just say like teams of or pools of 5 people, and they each get to pick a lineup of 5, and then its lowest combined score wins. So that'd be 15 people or 25 people, right? That might be like the entire elite field, essentially. That would be pretty fun, I think. And then you could still structure that amongst like, okay, whoever picked the best team amongst all the pools gets like the overall prize or something like that.
I'd love that, but I also would love this too. I think I would love if whoever had the highest points at the end of the year got some something.
Oh yeah.
Because if you go in so here's the thing, you may never win, but if you stay consistent with every race they do and sign up and everything you potentially could have all the points at the end of the year. And you win that crown, because that would be pretty badass too.
That would be pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah, like I said,
good ideas. Good
there
ideas.
You go. So, again, we won't charge you free trial for that. So, but Ryan, I definitely appreciate you joining the show. And like we said, definitely keep your eyes out for that States. And like I said, Ryan, it was a pleasure.
All right, you're the man, Cody. Thanks.